Canada. It was a frozen, hostile wasteland. And there was much work to be done if we were to survive the elements.
It's no secret that Canadians love comedy. From John Candy to Mike Myers, us Canucks have a rich history of producing some very funny people, and then sending them away to actually become successful.
Live from New York, it's
But while best known for our individual exports, Canada's history of comedic TV shows is often overlooked. Luckily for me and my ongoing struggle with torrent sites, that appears to be changing, with a couple comedies making their way into the US via Netflix and Hulu. And while I was binge watching my way through several shows and a bag or two of all-dressed chips, I noticed something peculiar. A vast majority of these comedies are set in the middle of nowhere. Think of the backdrop for some of America's biggest sitcoms. Almost all of them take place in massive cities, New York taking the lead, with Los Angeles close behind. So why are Canadian sitcoms so different? Well, if you're like me, your first thought goes to demographics. Canada is a massive country with not a massive amount of people, and it would stand to reason that rural life plays a bigger role in Canada's culture. However, if you look at the percentage of Canadians living in rural areas, it's actually exactly the same as our southern neighbors. So why do we focus on this? I think the answer lies in how Canadians view themselves. Despite what the statistics might say, Canadians very much see the great outdoors as a key part of what it means to be Canadian. Author Will Ferguson writes that culturally, Canada clings to the vision of the voyageur, the fur-trapping, wilderness-exploring, bear attack victims that helped found our truly great nation. Perhaps it's because of this deep-rooted pride in the outdoors that we feel the need to place our comedy, another great source of pride, in just such a setting. Interestingly enough, American television wasn't always so urban-centric.
The Andy Griffith Show.
In the 1970s, shows like the Beverly Hillbillies, Hee Haw, and the Andy Griffith Show dominated the airwaves. So much so that CBS earned the nickname the Country Broadcasting System. The move towards urban-based comedy was a deliberate commercial one. Research showed that young people were the most lucrative demographic, and more than ever before, young people lived in the city. In a controversial move, CBS and other networks cut a lot of their rural programming. The rural purge, as it was called, got so bad that one actor at the time remarked, "They canceled everything that had a tree in it, Lassie included." So maybe Canada's affinity for the rural backdrop is like the 3-year-old can of pickles in my fridge, just something we forgot to throw out. A relic of a time when Canadians did live more in the country than the city. And the somewhat ignorant but well-meaning country folk trope was not an entertaining curiosity, but something that actually resonated with a majority of Canadians. These were their neighbors, their friends. Maybe the change that came to American comedies will soon come to Canada as well.
My next guest tonight is the co-creator and star of Schitt's Creek.
While a few shows have made their way south, the Canadian television landscape still remains pretty insular, free from the heavily polished, heavily commercial demands of Hollywood. And if the rural setting is left over from a time long past, Canadians have found ways to keep putting new spins on it, whether it's introducing modern urbanites into the setting or making the ignorant country folk not so ignorant after all.
I'm asking for $5,000 for 69% of my company.
Why 69?
Both sides benefit.
And that's not to ignore the fantastic comedies that are set in the city. But the disproportionate focus on settings like these is interesting, because I think it reveals a little bit about how us Canadians see ourselves, and what we find funny. There's a growing duality, a conflict in the Canadian mindset, that even as we increasingly enjoy the trappings of urban life, we still have a fondness for stories about simple lifestyles and the beauty beyond our backyard. That conflict can be a good thing.
Why can't everyone get along? Everyone should get along. And you said, because conflict creates comedy.
To be honest, I don't think there's any one distinct reason why Canadian comedy favors rural locations, but I do believe this, that as the divide between our heritage and our modern lifestyle continues to grow, I think our comedy will only get stronger for it.
What if I'm not ready to come home?
There's a bug on your dress.
You